Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started even as other people are coming in from the parking lot. So first of all, welcome to today's event. Congratulations on weathering the rain to make it here. We really appreciate your time and you taking an opportunity to come today. So first of all, welcome. This is part of our Women Tech Council Career Series. We do a whole series of these around kind of lessons from the C-suite, so we get an opportunity to have lots of different conversations. Today's is going to be fabulous with Tessa. Before we jump into that, I've got a couple of announcements. Before I do those, I'm like to, first of all, can we give a round of applause to Weave for hosting us today? Woo! And then I'm going to invite Natalie up to do a welcome from Weave as our host today. And she has a couple of things that she's going to say, and then I'll give some intros, and then we'll jump right into our conversation.
Hello, welcome to Weave. I was asked to give just a quick introduction to Weave. I have been at Weave for just a little over 2 months, but I've been a woman in tech since the late 1900s, as my children like to say. If you don't know about Weave, I actually didn't know much about Weave before I started working here, but we serve people who serve others. So we make software that is specifically tailored for people that own healthcare practices. So dentists and doctors and veterinarians and optometrists. And we really want to help them build a successful business and provide the best inpatient care. We've been in business for about 15 years. We have about 30,000 customers. We're publicly traded. And I owe it to everyone at Weave as we're sitting here with a room full of very smart, career-minded individuals to try and recruit you to come and work here. So we are hiring. I actually found out there are more than 30 open roles. So be sure to check out the Weave careers page. I just really wanted to give a nod to Weave, as I've said. So I started working in tech in 1995. So I'm about 28 years in high tech. And, you know, while we've come a long way, we have a long way to go, but Weave is an absolutely people first and very inclusive company. So we are part of the Parity Pledge. We were recently recognized by In Utah as one of 100 Utah companies that are making a female-friendly or a woman-friendly work environment. We have period products, maternity parking, paid maternity leave, 2 women on our executive staff. We have a women's leadership group, a women's people group, and we have someone on our team who is dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's really just a wonderful place to be. The company's growing. We're doing great work here and helping people have better healthcare experiences and having a good time at the same time. So yeah, talk to Garrett there in the back. He can help you out. The last thing I'll say is one of our goals, I handle communications, internal and external communications. We have this beautiful building, and one of the things we want to do is make a space for our community. So the Women Tech Council is, of course, welcome back anytime. But if you have groups and you're looking for a space to meet, please always think of us. Our doors are open, and we really want to be a great part of all the great things that are happening in Utah. So thanks for letting me get up here for a few minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting today. So just a couple of things. My name's Sydney Tetra. I'm one of the founders of the Women Tech Council. And if you're not familiar, I'll give you kind of a quick few seconds on the Women Tech Council. We created the organization really focused on the economic impact of women in tech. And over the course of the last 15 years, we've created programs that go from high school to the boardroom. And for us, it's all about how do we take every stage of the talent pipeline and create programs and build community that makes a difference for everyone that's around us. Our high school program, She Tech, as an example, has had about 35,000 high school girls go through the program, has about 3,000 girls annually, and its intent is to inspire girls to pursue STEM careers. 95% of them tell us they don't pursue STEM, not because they didn't take a CTE programming class, but because they actually don't know any women in STEM and they have no role models and mentors. And when you expose them to see things that they can become, it changes pathways. And so for us, that's been a big initiative. I would give you 2 shout outs. One is if you have any high school girls around you, it's a program that runs 9th through 12th grade. You should connect them to She Tech. It's kicking off with the school year. Most of the high schools in the state or a lot of the high schools in the state have a She Tech Club. If they don't have a She Tech Club, they actually have 2 girls usually from every high school in the state that serve on our leadership board. Program runs annually. They get invited to all of the events. They activate the community. So if you have high school girls, you should absolutely get them involved inside of the She Tech program. Our board kickoff happens in a couple of weeks. One of the other things that the Women Tech Council firmly believes in are best practices and network. Network is such a big part of community. As Natalie kind of said about their space here as they think of community. We run a series of networking events over the course of the year. We call them 3x3s, which are kind of our speed networking events. Like how many people can we add to your network in a short amount of time? Next one's coming up on September 14th. It's a great opportunity to meet a large number of people and just connect with people that you might never have met in any other way. The other program I'm just going to shout out is on October 11th are the Women Tech Awards. This is a program that is in its 16th year, which is kind of crazy to think. And it is specifically about highlighting all of the talented women who work in technology. It's really easy if you're a CEO of a company to get recognition, but what we fail to recognize are all of the other amazingly talented people who serve all aspects of the tech community, and we wanted a platform to highlight that talent. And so we announced the finalists already. We have rising stars, we have students that are in college that we recognize, and it's this really great place where literally thousands of people come together to celebrate all of the women who are in technology and doing great things. That platform, interestingly enough, has proven that when you recognize talent within 6 to 9 months, there's career acceleration across the board. So we think a lot about, as an organization, how do you open more doors faster? How do you help people accelerate careers? How do you create environments and places and connections that help rise an entire community from the companies and from the individuals? And so as you see the things the Women Tech Council does, that for us is what the major priority is how do we become a champion of all of you? How do we help you accomplish the things that you're trying to accomplish? And how do we create an ecosystem where together we create outcomes that are really great for the individuals, for our community, for our state, and ultimately changing the world is what we think about. So I'm really excited to have you here today, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Tessa. When we were thinking about this career series, we knew that we had to have Tessa come and speak at one of those. How many of you have seen her TikToks or her Instagram? Okay, well now you have to all pull up your phone and go follow her. It's under the Job Doctor. I've known Tessa she has hundreds of millions of views. I don't even know what the exact number is now, but millions of views in her social platform. So Tessa and I met a long time ago, won't tell you how long ago now, when she was serving inside of a corporation. She was heading up all of people. And I remember our very first face-to-face where we met, and she was organizing people, and we were talking a little bit about that. So she comes from this really unique perspective of having to build organizations, hire talent, see what managers want, see how people have really leveraged their careers or the challenges that we faced. And then I would say, like all of us, she found herself at this place of what do I do next with my career? And she saw this really unique opportunity to jump in and take all the experience that she had and be able to give kind of these nuggets of wisdom in really short format to people to inspire them to how they think about their careers. So she jumped into Instagram and TikTok. She creates all these great TikToks, and if you watch them, you're like, that's amazing that you go from corporate into this social world. She since wrote a book over the last year, but she's done just this great job of making you think about what are the questions an employer might be asking, how do you think about your own career decisions, and how do you just really use that as a platform? So we get the opportunity to listen to her today. We're really grateful that she came. If you follow her on social, you know that she's had a lot on her plate over the last month. And so the fact that she took time today to come and to teach all of us and just share a few insights that she has, I think I'm very grateful for that. And I'm super excited for you to learn from her. So please join me in welcoming Tessa White.
Works. It does. Wonderful. I am so excited to be here with my people. You are my people. I started my career at the age of 8, and I was a door-to-door salesman for greeting cards. And I did it because I bought a Tiger Beat magazine to get a Sean Cassidy poster, and I could win a television if I sold enough greeting cards. So that's when my career started. Then I moved into my father had a clothing store. He had a line of clothing stores, and I became the buyer for his clothing store at age 14. I got to go to Los Angeles and buy clothes and help learn about how you staff a store. What does operations look like? Then I thought I was going to get married and I was going to have a picket fence and life was going to be real easy for me. And it wasn't. I ended up finding myself 3 children, no education, and trying to figure out how on earth I was going to make a living. So I want you to know that I, like you, have had to build my career from the ground up. There weren't job doctors when I did it. Nobody was a career coach back then. And I've had to figure it out. I've been hired, I've been fired, I've been laid off, I've applied for that dream job and got it, and I've also applied for the dream job and not gotten it, and wondered why. So I'm a lot more like you than you think. Now here's the edge that I have on you. Because I've been in HR, I've seen tens of thousands of careers rise and fall. And I get to be in the backdoor conversations between your manager or the company and you. And what comes to you and what you know about what's happening is not what's happening. Yeah, you get a watered down version. So I'm a truth teller, and we're going to talk about this today. And I'm going to teach you how to rise in a company and some of the most important things I think you need to know. But for starters, I thought I had made it here. I really had. I thought I had actually made it. I was on the podium for the New York Stock Exchange, the only female in the group. Yes, right? What a bucket lister. This was incredible for me and still one of the happiest professional days of my life. So, let me tell a story that happened shortly after this. The executive team was going to travel to Manhattan to meet with Blackstone, one of the biggest VC firms. And we had to give presentations, various presentations, and all of us were going. And like me, if you know me, I'm always over-prepare. I don't know if this sounds familiar to you. Over-prepare and make sure I'm early to the airport because I get really stressed if I cut it too close. So I'm at the airport waiting for the executives to come. Like, nobody's coming. And finally, the CTO walks up and he goes, "Hey, where is everybody?" I'm like, I don't know. What gives? Where is everybody? So he calls, and I hear on the other end of the phone, "Oh, sorry, we forgot to tell you. The rest of us decided to take the corporate jet. See you there." Oh, well, I guess I know where we stand in the pecking order. We just looked at each other and went, "Are you kidding me?" And that's when my imposter syndrome kicked in, and I thought, I haven't made it at all. Oh my gosh, this is horrible. Got to Blackstone, made my presentation with all the other executives, tried to be good, get it done, get it over the finish line, look like a professional. And I went to go leave for the airport with my cohort, the CTO, who was nowhere to be found. I call him, "Where are you?" Awkward silence. The others asked if I wanted to join on the corporate plane. I was the only executive and the only female that was not invited on that plane. And I tell you the story not because we're male bashing, we're not. There are just so many things that happen in the workforce that don't feel fair. And it's not going to end just because you've made it. Things happen, and part of your responsibility is to make it better for those that come behind you. Because there's the awkwardness of having it happen and going, "Oh crap, what do I do with this now? Do I go talk with the CEO or not?" And it's awkward not to talk to the CEO, and it's extremely awkward to talk to the CEO. But when those things happen, I'm begging you to have the conversation. I had the conversation with the CEO. Did I change everything for my career? Hell no. That is not how real life works, but did I have the courage to have the conversation? Yes. Maybe was it a little bit better for somebody behind me? I sure hope so. So what I want to do today is first set the expectation. Your career will empty you as much as it will fill you. It will. That's just what it looks like. And it's really, really hard. So how do we make it easier, especially as you're climbing? Because guess what? There really are patterns in people. There are points at time in your career where you're going to stall out, where most people stall out. They're the same things and they happen over and over. So let me teach you. I'm known for scripts, very practical how-tos. You'll find my book is less of a book and more of a reference manual of how to have that conversation, and a lot about conversations. So let's talk first about what's actually going on right now. We're talking about change today, a lot about change. Companies are laying off. Everybody's asking you to do more with less, and it's actually really, really a frustrating place to be right now. And a lot of people are making a mistake that I don't want you to make. They chase the green zone. They chase the green zone and they say, I just need to go to a company where this isn't happening. I am not sticking through this crap. This is ridiculous. And so people want to leave. Guess what? The red zone is actually really incredibly important to your career. And I'm not suggesting that you stay in a really toxic environment forever and ever and ever. But when your company hits up against some difficulties, and you know, when I say red zone, you know what it is. When it's hard, there are great things that happen because when we hit the red zone, it requires us to do things different. It is the trigger for innovation in your career. A case in point, Southwest. Do you remember that debacle? Everybody stranded all over the country. Southwest was in a very serious red zone. And when that red zone happened, a lot of people said, I'm out of here. This is ridiculous. I'm not working for this loser company. But guess what? The red zone required them to do things differently, to innovate, to get things across the finish line differently. Let's take a personal relationship. When things in your marriage are not good, is that when we say, hey, honey, I've been thinking, I really think we should go to counseling together. Let's just try and make us even better. No, it doesn't happen. We only go to therapy when things are broken, when we're in a red zone. Have you ever been in a department that laid off a bunch of people and said, hey, it's up to you guys now. Now you get to do it all. You're like, this sucks. I don't even know if there's a way to do it. You're in a red zone. And that's when you get creative about what needs to go. What can be done smarter? Is it time to implement new systems, new processes? Is it time to let go of old stuff? So red zone is really important. And what happens when you go through a red zone successfully, I call it the post-traumatic growth syndrome. That's how we get to the green zone. And then we really appreciate the green zone. But what happens if you chase the green zone all the time? Is you don't learn how to do that. You don't learn how to problem solve in a company that needs problem solvers. That, in fact, may be the most important skill set of all skill sets that you can learn is how do I get results for my company when things don't go as planned. And I can tell you that in terms of raises, people that stick through the red zone usually end up making, I've done probably 40 reorgs in my life. They usually end up getting promotions and they get big raises, like $10,000 to $15,000 raises, if they stick successfully through a red zone. And a red zone at some point is incredible on your resume, because if you think that you look good after you jump and go green zone to green zone to green zone, finding the grass is greener, and every 2 years you change, at some point, it may not hurt you initially, but at some point it will. At some point, an employer will look at that and say, I don't think they're resilient. They're not going to stick with me. Now, I know as much as anybody, that's how you get big increases, is you jump companies. So I'm not saying there's not a time for it, but if you always jump, if that's always your answer, it's going to hurt you. There's one more thing going on. We assign meaning to discomfort, and we say, it is uncomfortable, therefore it must be bad. It is uncomfortable, therefore I must leave. Don't do that. It's the wrong approach. Discomfort actually means you're starting to learn and grow. And if you're not a little bit uncomfortable in your job, you probably are too comfortable in your job. If you want to grow, you have to be uncomfortable. And when that comes, I want you to think of it as an opportunity. It just means you're going to dive into things you may not know. But we as human beings always will pick the discomfort we know over the discomfort we don't know. Think about that. That's why we stay in bad relationships. It's the discomfort I know. That's why we stay at bad companies, toxic companies even, because I know that discomfort. But there is something on the other side of discomfort that is incredible. And I want you to be open to what it can give you. And I also want to normalize it for you. I go to companies all the time. Companies will hire me and they say, Tessa, come in help us. We don't know why is everybody leaving? And you know what I do? I say, give me anybody. It's not a magic trick either. I say, give me anybody, any people that you want, and I'm going to talk to them. And I come back and I give them the results, and they're like, how did you know? The people know, right? The people in the company always know what's going on. They just do. And here's what I hear every single time. Processes are muddled. It's horrible. Somebody else can fix it. I'm going to hoard the information and make it really hard for other people to get it so I make my job safe. Too many sign off for decisions, us versus them thinking. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys. Who do I align with? Them, us. This is what happens because we have a human operating system in play. The human operating system, lots of books have been written about this. And what it is, I'm going to condense 3 books into one sentence. I want to look good, not bad, smart, not stupid. That's what the human operating system does. And it makes us make really bad decisions. It makes us separate from one another during change. So the first thing I want to tell you is when change comes, don't do that. Don't start having us versus them thinking. Don't start trying to align yourself with the same person or disengaging. I'm going to teach you how to build trust during those times because trust is what you need, especially during hard times. Raise your hand if you're in a company that's undergoing change that's uncomfortable right now. Okay, good. Then this is for you. This is absolutely for you. All right, 4 rules from the C-suite. We're going to talk about the 4 components of trust. And I'm going to teach you one little trick in each one, and I want you to think about which one you need to work on. Let's talk about these for a minute. I'm going to go into each one in depth, but let's start here. Everybody has a trust wobble. See this stool? 4 legs on this stool, right? This stool represents the trust in an organization. And what people do is they think that trust means one thing. They're very one-dimensional about it. People think that trust means I will do what I say. And while that is very true, and that is a component of trust, there are 3 other areas of trust that are really important for you to understand and how you build trust when things are going haywire. So the first one is commitment. Do I do what I say I'm going to do? Incredibly important. The second one, a lot of people don't think about. How well do I collaborate with others? Now this one's really important. Anybody want to guess why I've sat in so many meetings to promote people where all your managers get together and they say, here's the name I would like to bring forward to promote. And I can tell you that 90% of the people who don't get promoted for this reason. Anybody want to guess? Yes, anybody? Don't work well with others. It is actually a component of that. Yes. Any other guesses? Nobody knows what they do. Together, those are the correct answers because what happens is the manager makes a grand presentation and then everyone says, you know, they sound great, but I don't know them. And I'm not sure what they're capable of. Why don't we give them another year and see how they work with other people? Your ability to collaborate at a stage 3 in your career, we'll talk about the stages, is incredibly important because instead of being measured on your results individually, you are going to be measured mid-career on your ability to work well with others. And collaboration at its very core does not mean partnership. Collaboration means I care about you. Okay, think about that. Can another department say, I care about you? That's what it is. Now, competency, we're going to talk about that as well. Here's what's funny. Everybody thinks they're competent. Everybody thinks their company is incompetent. And for sure, everybody thinks their manager is incompetent. But everyone thinks they're competent. Guess what? You're not as competent as you think. Let's talk about what competency means. Competency isn't just, can I do the job, although that's a component of it. Do you have rigor around your decisions? That's important. Do you use data to actually help drive smart decisions? That's a part of competency. And here's the thing about competency. We don't have a good sense of how others view us. I promise you, you don't. You know why I know that? Because managers come to me and they say, I need to let go of Sarah. And I'll say, does Sarah know it's coming? And they'll say, oh yeah, 100%. Sarah absolutely knows it's coming. Do you know what I know for sure? Sarah doesn't know it's coming. We as people suck at giving feedback that's honest, at sharing honest dialogue. We just do. And it doesn't make you bad, it's just part of the human experience. And so you likely don't have a very good view of where you stand with people. You may have a directionally correct view, but the difference between being directionally correct and correct can mean your whole career. And if somebody tells you something about your performance that's neutral to negative, times it by 10 to the bad end, because that's what it really is. Because to get the courage to say sort of what it is, you have to decode a lot. And you need to pay attention to that. You need to pay attention to neutral to negative feedback. I'm going to tell you how to do that. And lastly, communication. We've touched on it. Everything's about communication, but can you build trust when you have difficult dialogue? Because the fatal flaw, the biggest fatal flaw for anybody's career is when they hit mid-career and they can't get comfortable with conflict. If you cannot get comfortable with conflict, you will not make it up the chain. And we think that we're doing a good job if we're just not fighting with other people, right? We're getting along, therefore everything's good. But you have conflict in a job offer, right? Do I accept the offer? You have conflict when you have to fight for resources and budget and prioritization. You have to get good at conflict, and you can have it in a way that builds trust. So I want you to think for a minute, which of those is your trust wobble? It typically shows up in times of stress. And let me tell you something about this stool. When all four of those are good, yeah, you can sit and you're pretty stable, right? If one of those elements is missing, it's destabilizing. If I cut off two legs of this stool, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to balance. And if I only have one of those legs in place, the one that's one-dimensional, I do what I say, you will not do well. So the idea is that we're going to get you balanced today. All right, let's talk about this one. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because this is do what you say. This is the one that everybody knows. If I'm going to build trust, I can't tell people I'm going to do something and then not do it, right? Very simple. But I want to share a story with you. I was called out for being unethical by my CEO. How fun is that? We had just done stock option grants for everybody in the company, stamped it, given it out the communication, and I realized I'd left off a woman who was on military leave. And I went to the CEO and I said, I just realized I left her out. And how about if next time we give stock options, we catch her up? And I just make a note. I thought I was being really creative and great. And you know what my CEO said? I got a dressing down. He looked at me and he said, no, we won't. That is not how we do things around here. He said, I will give her some of my grant so that we make it good. Because you can't just give out stuff that doesn't exist. Boards around stock options are very picky about this. So he gave her his, and he told me something I have never forgotten. He said, real leadership is when you do the right thing even when nobody's looking. When you're a leader that does the right thing behind closed doors, that is the sign of a true leader. So when you talk bad about somebody on your team and you think, oh, we're being all buddy-buddy and I'm taking into my inner confidence, you are losing trust with that person, even if you're not talking bad about them, because they're saying, I wonder what they say about me behind closed doors. Trust has everything to do. If you have something to say and it's somewhat negative, it's easy to do that over a water cooler with other people who think the same way, but I'll tell you what, it's real hard to do it to that person's face. Learn as a leader to have hard conversations, because it's when we know the truth that we can make changes, and it's when we know the truth that we can build trust with people, as opposed to losing trust. I had a leader that talked bad about everybody. Nobody trusted him. So you have to be really careful to make sure that you're loyal to those that are present, and when you have conversations, balance courage and consideration when you talk to people. An interesting thing about feedback is this: if you do it a lot, it feels like coaching. But if you only do it once in a while, it feels punitive. That is just tried and true. If you don't do it a lot, they're like, oh crap, what have I done? What have I done? And they don't want to receive it. You get used to it and you're like, oh, you're going to get good, you're going to get bad, you're going to get stuff in between. So talk more, not less, if you want to be a good leader. All right, principle number 2. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this one. Yeah. We avoid sharing hard conversations because we think it breaks trust when it doesn't. I had a guy on my team, my second in command. I was managing a global team. And one day he came to me and he said, can I talk to you? And basically, you know what he wanted to tell me? I sucked as a manager and that I was a micromanager. That's what he wanted to tell me. How many of you, by raise of hands, would be willing to have this conversation with your manager, to tell them they're a micromanager? Come on, brave souls. Oh, there's about 4 or 5 of you in the group. Here's the thing. You can have conversations about the hardest thing in the world if you do it the right way. And what I teach people to do is how to have hard conversations the right way, because the reason they go haywire is you go one direction too far, which is you just go scorched earth. Scorched earth isn't going to work. Or you go the other end and you go silent. Silent doesn't work either. Like dropping little breadcrumbs does not work. We're going to talk about that. So you have to get honest with people. And this is the conversation he had with me, and I want you to listen. Listen for what you like. He said, Tessa, I'd like to talk to you about something that's been on my mind. I would want to know if it were me and the shoe were on the other foot. Would you mind if I have that conversation with you? You have my attention. Please sit down. Let's talk. And then he says, when you give projects to people to do on the team, what's happening is they come back to you and you don't like the work that they've done. And part of that I understand, because you're known for implementing things really well. When something gets over the finish line from our department, it is known to be an A+ project. But when you change your mind or add to what people are trying to do or change it, your people are going back, and over time, what's happening is they don't dare do anything without your okay. And in fact, they've stopped doing the work. They want you to define everything that gets done so that they don't have to do it over and so that they will please you. And here's what's going to happen. You will never get anything better than what's in your brain. Oh. And then he said, is that what you intended? It was a really sobering conversation. First of all, it was pretty late in my career. I had never had anybody give me this information, ever. I had no idea I was a micromanager, if you can believe it. And yet, it was indisputable that I was. And so I wanted to stop for a minute. What did you like about that conversation? What worked about that? Comments? Yes.
He opened by checking if you were ready for feedback.
He opened to see if I was ready for feedback. Excellent. He created safety, I call that. Yes. I learned something from it. Absolutely. Other comments? Yes. He assumed good intent. That one, incredibly critical. And there's 2 more comments. Yes. He focused on the impact. I call that defining the gap. What I expected versus what I observed. This is what we thought you'd do. This is what you did. Creating the gap for people is really hard to do. Sounds simple. It's very hard. Yes. Go ahead. He was direct, but you felt a kindness in his words. Here's the trick. When you're having hard conversations with people, you can do 80% of it completely wrong, but you can't ever back somebody up against a wall. The moment they feel backed against the wall, you're going to get a bad result. How do I know? I've done thousands upon thousands of people arguing with one another. And you would die if you could unpack every conversation and hear and assume the bad intent. Even this one. How about this? Hey, Joe, did you forget to set your alarm clock again? You're late again. Assume bad intent. So many ways in that one statement. We assume bad intent when we think our manager is taking advantage of us and not giving us an increase. You assume bad intent on a project, that maybe something didn't go right and it comes back on you. We assume bad intent, but when you assume good intent, it changes everything. So here's the trick I'm going to teach you. 3 magic questions. Even if you botch the entire conversation, I'm going to assume you botch it all, okay? It's just very badly done. The gap isn't defined. You don't really know what you're saying. You break out in tears halfway through. But if you end with, do you see it differently? Is that what you intended? Or is there something missing that would help me understand? You just opened up the conversation. You just opened up the ability to have a partnering conversation. You just assumed good intent. And that was the beauty of Jeremy's conversation with me, is he told me something really terrible and then said, is that what you intended? Which allowed me to say, no, I would never do that on purpose. I don't want the team to feel that way at all. And it was the first way that I could learn to do better. So there's one other thing that you're doing. I'll go back. And this is something called halfway conversations. Now, if you really hate conflict, this is what you're doing. I can go sit in a conference room half an hour before I meet the company, and I can hear about 10 of these. Halfway conversation means you want to be truthful, and so you tell a little bit of the truth and hope that they decode the rest. So halfway conversations looks like everybody in a meeting saying, hey, manager says, is everybody on board for this idea? Does anybody have any concerns? No, we're good. We're good. Feel good. And then as you walk out, you hear somebody whisper to their coworker, so that's never going to work. It's a good thing it's on their shoulders and not mine, so they look bad. Have you ever done that? How about you get hired in a company and they promise you all this training and wonderful stuff, and the manager comes to you and says, hey, how are things going? And you say, it's going pretty good, but I sometimes don't feel like I'm fully up to speed yet. I wish there were more training. And you really go home and you tell your partner, this is the worst company I have ever worked for. They give no training. It's sink or swim. How many of you done that? I know you have. I see a few of you grinning. We have halfway conversations all day. Here's another one, burnout. Your manager keeps coming to you, right? You're the best person on the team because everybody in this room is the best person on the team. And they come to you and they give you all the extra work, and then the low performers on the team get a pass because they don't know how to do stuff good, right? And so about the 5th time in a row you've had to stay late, your manager comes up to you and says, hey, could you stay late tonight? I really need help one more time. I know I've been asking you a lot. And you say, I'd really love to, but I can't tonight. I'm getting in a lot of trouble at home, and I better come home tonight. And gosh, I am feeling a little bit of burn here. So what does your manager hear? Did they hear that you're burned out so much that you're looking for 4 other jobs online at night and you're down to the final interviews? Or did they hear what you said, which is maybe tomorrow? We are masters at halfway communication, and you're doing it all the time. And so I'm going to give you a challenge on the communication one. What I want you to do is I want you to identify one conversation you should have been having, something that's driving you crazy, something you go home and complain about. And I want you to craft the right conversation and use one of those magic questions. And for those of you over here, you have free books if you come over here before we're done, because they're sitting right here. But if you don't come over here, you'll never get your free book. But in the free book, you will see there are 2 full chapters on how to have the conversation, how to construct it, and there's examples on how to do it, and say this, not that. You'll have all kinds of wonderful phrases to help you craft this. And you'll even see there are a couple of them already crafted for you that are very common, like, I have too much work to do, and you keep giving me more than I have time to do in a day, if that sounds familiar at all. Free books. That worked. Excellent. All right, let's go to, I had a woman call me, and she said, this is how she started the conversation. She said, I am so glad you answered. I think I'm going to get fired. I'm like, whoa, you have my attention. What's happening? And she said, I just told my boss that they were an idiot. I'm like, oh, well, this may be an emergency then. Why don't we talk about this? So she proceeded to tell me that they had an agreement with her manager going into this particular session, and that her manager was signing up for certain things by certain timelines, and her manager came out of the meeting and said, we're not doing any of it, we're gonna do this instead. She's like, are you crazy? We cannot do that. And here's some of the things she said. I take this from the actual conversation. You didn't think about the impact this would have on the team. I don't think you understand what you're asking from the rest of us. You don't get it. There's no way we can build that with our current system. I thought I'd have a say in direction, but clearly I don't. And there were other gems she threw in there. Those were just a few of my favorites. Now, I want you to look at the other side. The other side assumes good intent. How does it change the whole tenor of the conversation? It's not like you to make big decisions without me. Is there something missing that would help me understand why you made these new decisions? Oh, man, I would listen to that. I would stay open in that conversation all day long. There are some system limitations you might not be aware of. Can we talk about those and how we might fix it? That sounds pretty easy to do. How about, this is a departure from our previous discussion. Can you help me understand why you felt you needed to change? As though they may have had a good reason. When you change to good intent, it will change the outcome of your conversations. Please, please, please focus on this. All right. I need to make sure how I'm doing on time. Ari, what time is it? Thank you. All right. Principle number 3. No's create silos. This one's really important. This is about collaboration. And to be a good collaborator, you have to limit your no's. John Gottman, expert on marriage, said this in his books. He said, if your ratio or your interaction of negative to positive interaction falls below 5-to-1, you can predict a couple is going to head for divorce. He can just say, they're going to get divorced. But the same is true at work. Think about how other people talk about you. Are your interactions positive or negative, assuming good intent or bad intent? This is why when we don't collaborate, it's why HR is the police department, it's why legal is the business prevention department, it's why marketing never pays attention to what everybody else says and is wedded to their own stupid ideas. It's why sales won't agree to do anything that helps the company get good business and just does what they want anyway. Sound familiar? Yeah, because it's universal. That's what happens. I want to teach you a model. David Bywater, he was my favorite CEO of all time. And he came into a company and he said, he shook it up. We lost half of our executives. We were all new. We didn't know how to work together. And the first thing he did is he said, I want to teach you about the genius of the tyranny of the or and the genius of the and. I'm like, what does that mean? I can't even follow that sentence. And he said, the tyranny of the or means somebody wins, somebody loses. We're going to do what you want or what you want. The genius of the and says we both get something we want. And he wouldn't let us disagree and have ors. He made us do ands. And it really changed how I thought in my career. So I'm going to teach you this one trick for collaboration. Yes and what if model. Okay? So I worked at Vivint Solar. There was 4,000 bros with flat build caps and 10 adults in the room. That's what this company was. That's what it looked like. And I did this for many years. Here's just a few no's. Let's just throw out a few no's just for kicks and giggles, right? No, you can't bring a tiger into the building. No, you cannot take the housing that we are paying for and providing and put it on VRBO and rent it out to other people and pocket the money. No, you can't give a $70,000 sign-on bonus and then leave the company before you start and keep the money. No, you cannot sign customer contracts for them because it takes too long to get through the process and you know they're going to buy anyway. That's what I walked into. I had come from healthcare. We were very buttoned up in healthcare. I thought my head was going to explode the first time that I worked at Vivint Solar. Would you be surprised if I told you that only one of those ended up being a no?
Did you bring a tiger into the building?
Tell me which one you think was which one was a yes? Which one was a yes? No. I did not allow a tiger in the building. I could see that one. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, right? Let's talk about how you get to yes with people. First of all, this is what we typically do. We say, we can't, we have to, the rules say this, not going to do it, doesn't work for our department, no, 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 no. Especially if you're saying the policy says this, you know you're on the bad track. I actually was really dumb when I first started HR, like really dumb. The CFO came to me one time at Q4 and he said, we can't do performance appraisals. We've got a great big deal that's going to close. And we really need to get that over the finish line. So what did I do? I proceeded to stomp my feet and yell and say, well, that's ridiculous. If people don't know how they're rated, then how will they know if they're good or bad? And then when we need to fire somebody, how will we have any rating at all? And when we communicate, it's the most important thing in the whole company. And he looked at me and he said, are the performance appraisal police going to come and get me? Because if they're not, we're not doing performance appraisals. I was just stormed off. They don't like me. Poor collaborators, bad partners. Nowadays, here's how I would use this model. I would say, first of all, you've got to understand where somebody's coming from. Very, very important to ask a lot of clarifying questions. So tell me what's going on. Well, we have to close this deal. This deal has a finite ending. If we don't close the deal, the company's going to go under. Oh, interesting. And then you get to have an opinion too. Do you have non-negotiables? That's the and. And I really like people talking to each other. I like there to be some communication because if we don't have communication, sometimes things get wrapped around the axle a bit. How can we create communication? What if? So here's what it looked like. Yes, I understand that we're going to have to put those performance appraisals off. And I really think we need to still have a forum or a venue so people can talk to each other. But it needs to be less structured and formal and more easy for people to get across the finish line. What if we did 3 times a year, 3 question check-ins? How are you doing in this company? Would you refer this company to other people, and do you plan to stay here? What do you need to be doing better? How can I support you more? What if that's all we did? How many of you would like that instead of the big old performance appraisal? Meets expectation, right? 70% of you. I don't know what that even means. So the yes and what if model becomes incredibly important to you. And I've gotten crazy things across the finish line. I worked at Corel. How many of you remember Corel? You have to be kind of older. Okay, Corel. It was my first HR job. The only reason I got the job is because nobody would take it. That's why. Everybody quit. Everybody quit, and there was one recruiter in the corner. And I said, I'll do it. They said, good, you're in. Head of HR, first job. And then they said, your job is to shut down Corel. And we are going to fire everybody that works here, except we're not giving severance to anyone. Good luck. That was my job. Now, doesn't that feel like a no? Like a hard pass no? I didn't know what I couldn't do back then. So I said, well, what do I have to work with? And one day I came into the break room and I saw a refrigerator. And the next day I went in and I saw a great big computer monitor. And the next thing you know, I was negotiating with everybody in the company. Joe, if you stay here for 3 more months, I will give you double monitors, and I will give you the chair that Bastian himself sat in, and I will give you that fridge. What do you think? Done. I had Post-it notes on every single thing in that company that was not bolted down. I'm not kidding. This is a true story. And when I left, we had successfully kept many, many people. And we're in a small town. You know, there's a finite amount of jobs, but those people stayed because we bartered with them. And I was able to give them everything, you know, help the company. The company didn't want that stuff. They're shutting down. So we just gave it all away. So you can get to a yes, even when it doesn't seem possible. Which of those sales scenarios are you most interested in seeing how it turned out? Not the tiger, because the tiger was a hard no. It's the only one you cannot pick because it didn't get to a yes and. Airbnb. Okay. Does anybody think they know how we could get to a yes with a yes and what if on Airbnbs? Any ideas? Throw out ideas. How would you do it?
Yes, and what if we keep the money and give you a percentage?
That's pretty good. You should go get a job at Vivint. Here's how it turned out. What we said was, I had to ask a lot of questions. Why are you renting things on VRBO? Because it's a 100% commission job, and I don't have any money coming in. Yeah, that's a problem. And I need money to pay my food and my bills. Okay, I get it. But you still can't, put 10 people in a room and we're on the contract. So what we ended up doing is we said, we negotiated with all the companies that we were doing housing with and said the contract will be between the employee and you, not us, but we will bring you all these people to fill your rooms. And to the salespeople, we said, we will help you pay we'll give you stipends, or you can earn different amounts of money to go towards your rent, up to free, if you knock on so many doors. We looked at before the sale, what are all the things that happen that tell us it's going to sell? And so they earned an amount of money that could help offset it. So, yes, I understand that you need more money in order to do this job. You've got to feed yourself. And we can't have people we don't know on the contract because we're liable as a company. What if we put you on the contract, but we help you pay your rent? That's how it turned out. So I want you to understand this concept is incredibly powerful, and it is so, so useful in collaboration. All right, lastly, principle number 4, competency. Remember when I told you that you think you're all that and you're not all that? Not to be rude, I'm not even all that. Every single piece of feedback you hear, you have to pay attention to. And if you're waiting until year end to get feedback, good on you. That's what most people do. They go, I know what's going to happen. I know. When I write my self-appraisal at the end of the year, it is going to be so spectacular, my manager will have no choice except to give me a massive promotion for all of the things that I have done. And does that happen? No, it does not happen. Finite pool of money, has to give it out a certain way. 70% of you getting a meets expectation, which means either you're really good or really not, and we don't really know. And so if that's what you're using as your basis for whether you're doing well in a company, it's flawed from the get-go. Here's what I want you to do. Own your own feedback. And I'm going to tell you one last story, and then we'll do questions. One last story. I was in the room when the CEO was fired. Came to work early, and it was really interesting because the head of the board had flown in from Blackstone, 7:30 in the morning, thought I was doing a stock option exercise. What is it about those stock option exercises and me learning things? 3 minutes later, the CEO was fired and escorted out of the building. Wow, what a start to my morning. The interesting thing is when the CEO walked out, I said to myself, he's surprised. I think the CEO is surprised. And yet those of us that work with the CEO are not necessarily surprised. We kind of could see that coming. It's not that we talked about him behind closed doors, but we just kind of knew. Well, next thing that happened is I was waltzed into the new CEO, the first person to meet the new CEO, and I sat down. And that new CEO said, hello, nice to meet you. I have one question for you. I have to let go of half of the executive team. My question is, will you be one of them? I couldn't even catch my breath. What do you do with that? And he proceeded to tell me that I had a reputation for not getting along with sales. Can you imagine? People bringing tigers in the building and stealing our money. Honestly, I thought I should get an award for working with them. But he said, no, unless you can do better with sales, I can't get done the things I need to do. And I just need to know, can you make the course adjustment that you need to make? What I realized in that moment is that HR, me, the person that's supposed to know everybody really well and read body language, that the person I was supposed to know the very best, me, had no idea that this was a weakness. So from the CEO on down, you don't know how you're viewed. You just don't. So here's what I want you to do to fix that for yourself. I'm going to stop here for a minute on the 5 stages of growth. I'm now remembering why I put this slide in here. I want to give you just an overview. There's 3 whole chapters in the book dedicated to stages of growth and what skill sets you need at every different level of your career. But what's really important for you to understand is that when you hit stage 3, mid-management, the rules change. The rules change on you. Stage 1, doers. When you are hired into a company, your job number 1, first job when you're early in your career is to do what your manager says, and when you do it better or faster, you win. You ask a lot of questions, you win. Stage 2, your manager should be able to give you broad objectives, and you have to figure out the in-between. If you keep asking a lot of questions, you're going to drive them crazy. And if you need them to identify every single thing that needs to be done, you're going to fail. Because you've just gone from having your manager being dependent on a manager to being independent. The rules changed on you. And when you go to a stage 3 and you're a collaborator, in a very cruel twist of irony, trust me, this is where people get really snagged up. They think that their job is to just sit in their silo and get results. Do what my manager says, I'll do the in-between. And if you do that, you'll fail. When you're in a stage 3, interdependence becomes king. That means you can't do your job unless you go outside of the company and you know other people who you can call upon to help you. You have to augment your own knowledge. You have to hire team members. You have to work well with other departments because your projects are more complicated. And you don't get to just run in a silo anymore. And that is where conflict and communication shows up. And if you're just trying to keep it all nice and easy and never have conflict, that's where you stop. That's where you stop growing. Hit about $65,000, $70,000 and you go nowhere beyond. Stage 4, builders, directors and VPs. Think you got it made, right? I got a director title, everything's great now, right? No, it is not, it's very hard. When you are a director, all of a sudden, your whole job revolves around saying the same thing over and over. You're fighting for resources. You are always needing to redo your budget. You're being asked to do impossible things by cutting your budget all the time, and I see some of you nodding who are directors. It is incredibly difficult. You're also thrown into the they category, they meaning the stupid ones. There's them, right? There's them, the stupid ones, and us. So you're thrown into the stupid category all of a sudden, and it's incredibly difficult. And sometimes the senior people give you things to do that you don't agree with, and you have to move it down the organization. And people look at you, your mid-managers in stage 3 look at you and go, that's a stupid idea. And you somehow got to figure out how to help people get on board with things. It's super hard. And stage 5, expanders, this is where it all changes again. How interesting is it that in the beginning, the manager had to tell you everything to do, and in the end, a CEO isn't going to tell you what to do. In fact, if you're expecting a CEO to tell you what to do, you're going to fail. You are telling the CEO, here's what I think needs to be done. Here's how I would prioritize things. You're defining it. You're doing the defining. You know enough about your role. People are afraid of you at a stage 5, by the way. Or at least, maybe that's too strong of a word. We say they're afraid of you. They want to please you. And so a listening ecosystem is incredibly important that you develop that, because otherwise you're going to get yes men and yes women, and you're not going to know the truth. And you got to a stage 5 because you were really good at making decisions, arguably. You know, you made good bets on things and you won most of the time. But if you get to a stage 5 and you don't listen to your people and you make quick decisions without listening down the line, again, you're not going to make it. So that's just a quick overview. In the book, 3 whole chapters on beginning, middle, and senior careers, and all the things that are fatal flaws, the things that are going to trip you up, how to get around it, what you're not going to expect and what you're going to see. So read that chapter of the book. But the reason I tell you that is because there are a couple of skill sets that you need to develop regardless. If you plan to grow in a company, you've got to learn to make proposals and asks. You have to learn to talk the language of numbers, data, and you have to be able to get comfortable with conflict. So 3 skill sets you must have and develop. So let's talk about top performer plans. I don't like 9 boxes. Some of you in HR know what this is. And a 9 box basically means we put people in little boxes and say where they should sit in a company. And only 3% of the people are future leaders, 3 to 5%. The rest of you are in all these other lovely boxes. But the people that are future leaders are the ones that get all the rewards in a company. Stock options, mentoring, growth, training. I do not want you to wait until you're in a box to do this. That would be silly, wouldn't it? And in fact, if you are in that box, you already know. Managers have such little good news to share sometimes with people that they will tell you if you're in a super good box and you're one of their top performers. So if you don't know if you're a top performer, you're not. That stings. That just hurts a little to say out loud. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to develop your own top performer plan. There's no reason you can't. In the book, I've mimicked exactly what they look like. And so you know what to ask for. And I'm going to cut to the chase on this one so that we have time for questions. Number 1, do you have informal mentors? Not mentors where you go up and say, will you be my mentor? Because I actually don't like that very much. One person typically doesn't have all the things for you. Every single one of you, it's within your grasp to find informal mentors. Find people who know how to make proposals or asks, know how to lead a team. People who are able to have conflict and do it while they build trust instead of break trust. People who are excellent at presenting data. That's another really, really important skill set that you have to have in today's world. Find somebody that's an informal mentor, watch them, watch how they do it. And then when it's your turn to give a proposal, say, can I have 10 minutes with you? I've been watching you and I really like this and this about what you do. Can I just give this to you and give me some feedback? That's how you have informal mentors. Jumpstart your career. Build momentum now. Don't wait till you're in. Do that now. The other thing that top performers have experiences and exposure to things above them, people above them. If you go to your manager and you say, I want to sit in on an executive meeting and see how they are run, or I want to help present this proposal you have, or let me be on a cross-functional team or help run an ERG group. I promise you your manager will jump up and down because managers have so much to do and aren't typically trained on how to do performance or development plans for people that when you go to a manager and say, I want to sit in on a corporate meeting, I want to take this training class online, and I want to do this. They go, yes, wonderful, I will pave the way for you. You have no reason you shouldn't have a top performer plan. So go to the book, look at all the different areas that you have, and I want you, as a takeaway, to talk to your leader about the things that you need and take your career into your own hands. There's also some other ideas about how do you get feedback during the year instead of waiting till year end. There's also something called a quick validate. They're phrases that you use to see if you're on track or not on track. And there's one other section that teaches you phrases to pay attention to that I know from experience are decoded ways that your manager's telling you're in trouble. And I want you to start paying attention and listening to those so that you can get out ahead of your feedback and build the career that you want. All right, just give yourself a quick score here in your head if you have to, because I want you to pick one thing you're going to work on. I'm ethical, even behind closed doors. I don't talk bad about people, right? That's the one element of trust. Number 2, do I have honest conversations, or are they halfway conversations? Or do I just not know how to do it right and I'm not assuming good intent? Number 3, am I considered a good collaborator, meaning I care about you? And if you don't know if you're a good collaborator, go talk to the departments you work with and say, what would you like to see? What are the gaps or the things that you need that you would like to see different? And have I owned my own growth feedback plan? Pick one of those things and work on it. The chapters will help you. They give you exercises to do. And I would also tell you that I take people, real people like you, and in my podcast every week, we dissect problems on the air. And I help them with scripts and ways to talk to their manager about things. And so I invite you to listen because you might learn a whole heck of a lot about how to do it because your problems are everybody else's. So before I take questions, really quickly, what I know for sure, diving into the red zone will directly correlate with your own promotability. 100%. Stop trying to avoid it and chase the green zone. If you stay longer, It will open up multitudes of opportunities for you. Instead of saying, the company's dying, this culture's dead, I'm gonna leave before, I don't wanna be the last one here. That's just what people say. And every single huge reorg I've ever been a part of, or every huge acquisition I've ever been a part of. So if you're hearing that, it's normal. Don't freak out. It's just what people say and do. It doesn't mean it's true. And lastly, using partnering language, this yes and what if, will build rather than break trust. People want to know they can believe that what you say is what you really feel. They really do. Think about the people you trust at work. They're the people who will tell you the truth. The key is learning to tell the truth in a way they can receive it. And that's what those 3 magic questions are for. And I know that if you use that, you're gonna do much, much better. All right, I'm gonna open it up to questions now. What time is it, Ari?
47.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes for questions. Go ahead.
Going back to the red zone, green zone, I was recently put into a company with mass layoffs, went into the red zone, thought what you thought, and I worked hard to Hello? Worked hard to, get experience, get noticed, get things like that. And then I was promptly laid off 2 months later, and now I'm screwed. So at what point, and I wished I had bailed. So how do you know when to stay and make it work and when to bail?
Sometimes you don't, quite honestly. You just don't know how it's gonna turn out with certainty all the time. But what I would do, the moment you decide to stay, you better be measuring what you're doing. And this is the beauty of knowing that I'm just gonna be working at a company and I care about results. Don't just go and work and get the day behind you. Get perfect clarity on how you move the needle. I call it playing in the gap in the chapter. And it's about the things the company cares about. And if you start to measure them, then at least when you leave in 2 months, you should have some proof points that you can put on your resume that show we went from here to here.
I only ended up at the company 5 months, so I unfortunately don't have a ton of those. But yeah, it was a bad situation.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. There is such division between people and the workplace right now, right? People kind of feel taken advantage, at least on TikTok. People feel very taken advantage of, and that's where we get quiet quitting. People saying, I'm not gonna give 2 weeks notice. I want off on my Fridays and I want off on my Mondays. It's all boils down to one thing, and it's people feeling taken advantage of by their company. And so I would say anybody in this situation like you where there's a ton of change and you choose to stay, pay really close attention to what the company values. Go listen to the quarterly reports because you'll understand where they're investing and where they're divesting or taking money away, and you'll understand what winning could look like, and you've got to align yourself very, very quickly to the things, those few things they care about driving, and see if you can start working in those areas and making a difference within that particular thing. And that will help a lot. Right beneath you.
Is there ever a time that you should ignore some of the feedback that you get? And if so, how would you know that some might be just because you're a woman versus something that you should work on changing?
Yeah, not all feedback's accurate. I will tell you, I have had my manager, a CEO called me in once and said, I don't trust you. I heard so-and-so came to me and said that they learned this, and the only way they could have learned it's from you. And I'm like, I didn't say anything. They didn't believe me. Can you imagine your manager just saying, well, you can say all you want, I don't trust you. Here's the tricky thing about feedback. If your manager in particular, that's the power dynamic we're talking about, if your manager believes it, you gotta go with it. And you go with it not by saying, yes, I did that, but I would say something like, I hear what you're saying, and although I disagree with you, I hear it, and I will do my best to make improvements. You can only change someone's perception going forward, not backward. Please remember that. So many people, when they get called on the carpet for something that they disagree with, spend so much time fighting about what is and isn't in the past that they lose the opportunity to quickly change perception moving forward. And when you just say, I will do everything I can to change your perception moving forward, and then every time, even if you make no changes at all, and you're doing the same things, when you call out, see, I'm doing this thing, I wanted to make sure that that's what you wanted more of. you will find you can change perception, but you cannot change perception going backwards. It's very, very hard. Yes?
So I'll start this off by saying two statistics, and someone please fact check me too, because my Wi-Fi is not working. But the average tenure is now 3 years. And then if you take into consideration earning potential,
Yes?
if you don't move every 3 to 4 years, another statistic is you will cut your earning potential in half by the age of 50 if you don't, move as frequently as possible.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, how long do you stay in a company?
Great, great question. I want to show you guys something really quick that I didn't show you before. I don't know if this is start over my slides or not. You're right. People we've gone from long-term thinking, if you go back to a boomer, long-term thinking, pensions, right? I'm going to stay at the company till I die. Then you go to the next generation. They're like, yeah, maybe it's not a pension, but I certainly want to get my 401k a little longer term. Then we go to the next generation, and they're saying, urban comfort. I really care about not so much long-term like 401k or equity, but I care a lot about, can I have a car, a house, or whatever. Then you go to the next generation, it's like experience economy. I want to be able to experience things, and then you go to Gen Z. Gen Z's like, you freaking kidding me? I don't have $200 in my bank account. I have no loyalty to you. And so this short-term thinking actually shifts the way we make decisions. You're right in that experts are predicting that the number of jobs a Gen Z will have in their lifetime is 30. Let that sink in for a minute. I talk to employers a lot about how they have to change their value proposition to keep people and bend the curve on loyalty. But if that is the case, and I agree with you, an extra $5,000 on your early in your career, an extra $5,000 in your job offer equates to over $250,000 in lifetime earnings. And if you invested that, it's a lot more than that. So money matters, but my advice is this: I never go too extreme one way or the other. You need to stay in a company long enough that you get a promotion, because a promotion on a resume is worth about 10 grand to you. Even if you didn't get a raise associated with it, it's worth about 10 grand and sometimes even more on your resume. So that shows an employer that not only were you trusted, but you made it through a red zone and trusted with more responsibility. In companies where they have a huge ecosystem, so you can continue to grow within, like IHC for me, so you can move and move and move, and you see those promotional possibilities, stay longer. But in companies where you're tapped out and it's too small and you can't see the growth, then go. And so you just kind of have to split the difference. I don't expect people to stay at a company on generally for more than about 3 years, unless they see a pathway to grow and learn. And let me tell you one other trend I'm seeing is that it's not just a growth within the same field or function like marketing. There's high value for people who work the ecosystem and work in different parts of the company and learn that ecosystem. High value. And more companies like Google and Amazon and the really cool ones are paying attention to that. So that has value as well. Other questions?
You were talking about giving feedbacks. I've personally had managers that would not be good receivers of feedbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And how can a manager learn to actually be open to feedback or invite feedback more?
Here's my wish list. This is my Christmas wish list, the Job Doctor. My Christmas wish list is that every manager in the whole world had to have their employees give them a performance appraisal. I think that would be incredible. I would say every manager should be asking their team members on a regular basis, what can I do that would help you? What can I do that would help you with your career goals, and what are they? How are we tapping into your potential, and how are we not? What are things you know how to do that you feel like we're not fully tapping into. I know that's not directly how do I be a better manager, but you're going to learn a lot from that question. And if you dare go there, the third question would be, how do you think other team members perceive me? And the reason I say that is because if you say, how do you perceive me? Guess what's going to come up? Nada, because we don't like conflict. But when you say, how do you think other team members perceive me? You get a more honest answer. And people may not be honest with you the first time. They may not be honest with you the second time. But if you continue to ask and listen to what they tell you, and they feel that you have their best interest at heart in terms of growing them and teaching them, they'll open up. Just takes a minute. In fact, the deepest need of every employee in the world, no matter what country you're in, is to feel seen. It is to feel seen. Money is super important right now. Don't get me wrong. Money is way important. But feeling seen trumps about everything. And so that's why I said those questions. If your people feel seen when you say, how can I help you grow, or what are the things you know how to do that I haven't tapped into? One more question, and then I think we're done. Oh, there's so many. I'll be in the back to answer questions. I promise. I'm staying. Go ahead.
So this is a very specific situation. I've noticed an issue with a team, sister team in my company. They don't collaborate well. There's been feedback, and I brought it up to the VP of that department. They report directly up to him. And we had a good conversation that it needs to be done. You know, he fought back a little bit because it's a protective issue, right?
Right.
And we continued having the conversation, and it ended with him being like, well, you fix it. In not so many words, like, why don't you take this on?
Yeah.
And I feel really important to fix this. I just don't want to because it's kind of his job. And I am a team player, and I jump on grenades, and I, clean up whenever I can, and I'm all for collaboration across these teams. I just don't want to do it. How do, or not it be my responsibility? Because then what happens is, if it doesn't work, then it's my fault. If it does work, he gets the credit because it's his team, and now they're all collaborative and everybody loves them.
Yeah, well, there's a couple ways you could go with it. It is a complicated question. One is you can go back and say, I thought about how I might be able to solve this. It's going to take some of my time. I've made a priority. Here's my first priority, second, and third. Here's where I would put it on the list. When I put this on, here's what's going to come off. I want to make sure you're comfortable that this is the new prioritization. If that doesn't feel right, then let's talk. And you can say, as I looked at it, it doesn't feel like it's going to help us win as much as me keeping focused on these things now that I've thought about it. Maybe there's some things that, we as a team can each do, but in hindsight, I think my assessment is I should stay focused on this. Do you see it differently? And see where it goes, because it is complicated. But I will tell you, when you make your manager look good, while irritating to you, particularly if they take credit for it, it does help your career as well.
Not my manager.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah, limited. So it helps your career in terms of the promotability piece, right? Cross-functional. Yeah. But women in particular, we tend to sign up for too much. We're like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, until you take on so much. I just talked to a lady yesterday in my Rent My Brain session. She took on so much, and she did it for 2 years before she said anything. And then she said, hey, remember when so-and-so quit and I took on all that stuff and now I've been doing this and this? And they're like, no. And they put her on her performance plan because she couldn't get everything across the finish line. You have to be very, very careful about your boundaries in the workplace so that you don't get burned by things. All right, I know we're out of time. I'm going to be in the back. Here's the deal. If you don't have the book, there's a few over here. We want you to have them. If you would like to buy a book for others, I brought some in the back, and I've got a couple of people helping me, and you can buy them. What I would ask, follow me. I do live sessions and Q&As all the time. On TikTok, I'm Job Dr. Tessa. On Instagram, Job Dr. Tessa. I think I'm Job Dr. Tessa actually everywhere you could possibly look, except for YouTube, where I'm the job doctor for some reason. So, and I do live sessions and Q&As, and I would love to have you join me. And I would love to have you check out the podcast. Like I said, it's called The Job Doctor Is In, and Career Straight Talk. You can find it on Apple or Spotify. The book is found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and we're selling books in the back if you wanted any extras. Oh, and I'm autographed. That's what my husband's trying to say. I was like, I already said that. I will autograph your books if you would like. Although I find that very funny and silly, but I am happy to do that. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you for spending your afternoon, and thank all of you for coming. We really appreciate it. We'll see you at the next event, September 14th, October 11th. Those 2 dates better be in your calendar. Thank you for coming today, and thank you, Tessa, for sharing all your wisdom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Felt so good to